You're listening to The Big Lift, the podcast of Web Trends Optimize, the CRO solution that enables marketers and developers to maximize the ROI on their digital properties. Web Trends Optimize is a powerful, feature-rich and easy-to-use solution, all delivered within a fixed-price contract with no additional cost for increased functionality ever. During these podcasts, we meet some of the key influencers within the marketing and conversion world to understand their roles and examine their challenges. CRO is a valuable tool for increasing conversions and therefore revenue for an individual business. But in today's episode, we investigate whether it's possible for a brand and its retailers to use CRO to work together for mutual benefit. Eduardo, you're one of the co-founders of San Paulo-based agency AIM Conversion Experts. Could you give me a little background of your career so far?
Sure, John. First, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm honored to be here at the podcast. I listened to it. I love the content, so it's an honor. I would like to thank Sam as well for thinking about me to come here and be here. Very nice. Thank you very much.
It was all good.
AIM is a pioneer here in the Brazilian market. We've been doing CRO and experimentation for the last 13 years. We only do that. We are focused on experimentation. And because we were the first, we had the opportunity to work with completely different segments, industries in the market. So we do retail, we do banking, financial services, educational, B2B, so digital products. So we've done them all. And that gave us the opportunity to build like a library of more than 2,000 tests during these 13 years in all these different fields. So I think this is like something that differentiates us into the market. Another point I'd like to highlight about AIM is that we have inside CRO two completely different types of services. We do the traditional experimentation, that is that someone hires us to work on their own properties, like digital properties, like websites or apps. But we also have a different service that's called retail media optimization, that we help brands to improve their results inside a third-party app or website. It's mostly related to brands that want to improve their results into points of purchases, digital points of purchases.
So that sounds really interesting because most companies worldwide will do CRO for a particular company, and that company may have multiple brands to it. So it could be you describe as a retailer. Because you're working with potentially the brands themselves, I'd like to know a little bit more, because from that perspective, do you first engage with the brand or do you engage with the retailer?
Yes, when we started, I think to answer that, I will just step a little back to say what was the reason that we wanted to do that. Because when we worked with retailers, we found out that they are really good about understanding the customer and understand how to sell products, but they don't know a lot about the products itself. So what are their positioning? What are their features and so on? So and we found out that the brand it's willing to go there and explain that all, like to improve that, to highlight all these things. So we wanted to put these two different entities together to improve the conversion rate, getting the most out of what each one of them has to offer. And then when we started that, our plan was to go first to the industry and explain to them, like to the advertisers, like what we were doing. And they got it straight away. They understood it really well, what was the plan, and were very interested in the project. But then you have the retailer, the retailer reality, right? That it sometimes differs because they have a whole product roadmap that sometimes is not related to what the advertisers want to do, and so on. So we had to find out a way to getting them interested as well on that. And I think this was the first big challenge that we had to build these services.
So just before we move on, I just want to clarify what this service that you offer. So you work with brands through retailers to help them optimize their site for the brand as well as the retailer. Is that correct?
Yes. So what we do is we go inside the retailer, we study all the shopper behavior inside that point of sale, point of purchase, and then from that insights, understanding their whole journey, not only impressions, clicks, and sales, we can get a better understanding of like how that shopper relates to the channel. And then the idea for that is to build for the advertisers media plans much more customized than they used to have before. And not only that, because this is part of the plan, like just to give them the idea of what they need to do and where they need to invest their money. But the second part of the project is actually from the insights that we get with that numbers, we create a CRO strategy to do experimentations to improve the brand's content and also increase the media inventory of the retailers. So straight away, we can add more different spaces to the retailers that they can offer to the brands, validate if they actually work or not, and if they do, they can become a new product that they can sell to other brands in the future. So the idea is to do the whole cycle, is to understand the shopper behavior, build like their media plan, build A/B tests to improve their experience, and monitor those results to identify if they're working or not, so we could optimize even more their media plan afterwards.
So let me get this clear. Which one of them is your customer? Is it the brand or is it the retailer?
That's a great question. We started this conversation with both. When we had the idea of the services, we offered first to the industry, the brands, and they got it straight away. They wanted to invest on it. But what we realized was the retailer, when they didn't have a CRO operation inside, or they didn't have like a retail media structure very, very well developed, they would accept the industry to pay for the service and then just get the results. You get the increase of revenue and also have the service for free. Yeah, the brand paying for it. But as soon as we start the project and they see how we are organizing their data, the sort of insights that we are giving to the industry, they quickly understand that they are not getting the most out of the project, because they could charge much more for the industry than just getting the service for free. So we found that and understood that the scenario. So nowadays, what we are doing is we are talking first with the retailers, so that will bring them on board, and they are buying much faster than the other way around. So to the services. So nowadays, I can say that the retailer is our first customer. So they are the ones that get the service, and they offer that, resale that to the brands from the value that they might think that it's worth.
So I can see that's obviously changed over time, where you started off with the major brand and now you've moved to the retailer. Does the brand feel as though that it's in competition now with other brands inside the retailer? Because if it was me, I'd be sitting there and thinking, well, if, say, for instance, L'Oreal was doing it, then I was another perfume company, then I'd have to do it. It's almost that I need to be able to invest in that to keep my airtime at the same level as my competitors inside that retailer. Is that the kind of thing that happens?
Yes, it is. It's nice to highlight L'Oreal. It was one of the clients that already tested the service. We did that for some retailers with them. We also worked with Apple, with Adidas, Samsung, So we work with big players here in South America doing that type of service. Yes, what we found out with that is that the moment that one of the brands start doing that, improving their results, it gets very sticky. Like the other brands want to do it as well. So we find that this is like something that happens, and then we have to build policies inside the retailer so that we can work together, right? We can have more than one brand doing it. The only question is their scope of service. Like what can they do in parallel at the same time, right?
So you talk on your website about building media plans, and I'm assuming that media planning is part of this service that you're offering with CRO. So it helps be able to promote certain products along the way. That must be quite a challenging task because, for instance, as we're approaching Christmas, it must be that lots of brands want to be able to have their airtime within the retailer. How do you manage to be able to work with that retailer to balance it out so that the brand gets whatever voice or share of voice, let's call it that, because share of voice is very important. What share of voice that they're getting from that particular retail, especially around a time such as Christmas in the perfume industry?
We are not trying to sell quantity to the retailer. So the idea is not to get, hundreds of different brands to do that at the same time inside the service, because that will be impossible, because we are not doing that in an automatized way. I like to tell, when I start talking the discussion with the retailers, is that if you think about retail media and advertisement, you have two completely different types of clients. You have like the small sellers or brands that are there. They will be happy to use the self-service tools to go there and buy their ads and their sponsor products, and then and check the results in a self-service way. What we are doing here is not working with those clients. We are working with that top shelf clients, brands that work with them, that invest already millions of dollars inside the retailer for advertisement. Okay. And then they don't want to have like a self-service product. They want the insights of the retailer. They want someone inside the retailers to help them to improve their results and to get the most out of it. So those are our clients. So what we try to do is like to build that relationship with like these big brands inside the retailers, and improve the amount of funding that they are giving to the retailer. So we found out that when we started the project, one of the biggest concerns of the industry was exactly that, because of the size of the retail teams of the retailers, they didn't have many people there to help them out. So what they see usually is a very standardized media plan. So, and they understand that their brand is completely different from their competitors. Like their positioning is different, their strategy needs to be different. So it doesn't make sense to them to have the same media plan as the other ones. They want something customized. And that's what we are offering. And using experimentation to validate the hypothesis and to build better results, like better actions out of those numbers that they have at the moment. And using the trade marketing strategies, right? Like loyalty, share increase, one category growth, or win back the client, and so on.
So, Eduardo, how do you cope with the demands of data and the restrictions on data? Actually, who owns the data and where does it go to?
The way that we managed to work on that is like to build internally. We work next to the retailers. All the data from the retailers is that we extract and organize and present is first presented to the retailers, to then, after their approval, be shared with the industry. And this was a very important part of the process, because in the end of the day, there are a lot of sensitive data that we are working with, right? Like the revenue how many transactions they had for each one of the brands, their market share. So we are very careful to only present what the retailer wants us to present. So and this is something that's important to highlight because it's always the biggest concern with all the retailers that we talk to.
It seems on the outside to be a win-win situation. So the retailer wins, the brand wins, and actually you guys win as well. I'm seeing it as quite a complex kind of process, and it may not be complex at all, because you've got the brand to answer to, you've also got the retailer to answer to, and you may be influenced with regard to the retailer's capability or no capability, and you actually having to step in there. So I'm kind of trying to get my head around the mechanics of it, because I think it's a really interesting and very stimulating part of business that we probably don't see much at all. So it's very, very encouraging to see something using CRO to be able to do something different in the marketplace, which actually delivers a great return on investment for both the manufacturer or the brand and the retailer themselves. When you start to talk about doing this with a retailer and a brand for the first time, conceptually, do they get it, or does it take a long time for you to sell in the notion to the brand and the retailer at the same time?
Depends on the level of maturity of the retailer into retail media. Like when we started this project 3 to 4 years ago, nobody understood what we were doing in terms of the retailer. So it was something that the industry was already ready to have the service. They had all the positions in place. They had the people that did all the insights and so on, but the retailer didn't. Nowadays, we see a different scenario. There are a lot of retailers that they're structuring their retail media area, and then depending on their level, they get it what we are trying to do, and they understand the value of it, especially because even when they have people internally to help those brands, usually these employees, they are working with a lot of brands at the same time. So they don't have the time to go into the specifics and learn the insights, the funnel, the clicks of each one of their brands, their clients. So we will help them to do that. And then it gets very interesting when they know it. We can connect their data. It grows really fast, the whole structure. But we still find those scenarios where the retailer is still not ready for the service. But because we have been doing this for the last 3 to 4 years, we understand also how to help them to speed up this process of understanding the project. So especially when the retailer, when the industry comes and offers the service to the retailer on that first model that I explained. Mm-hmm. We have a team that will work next to the retailer on a daily basis there to explore with them the data, to explain the opportunities that there are more than just sell the ad space or the sponsor ad there, the product inside the widgets. And then we start giving those insights and what can be done next and how we can connect that with their toolkit. Yeah, because this is another issue that sometimes it happens, that they don't have the right technology in place. And then we can use A/B testing tools sometimes just to give them the insights of that inventory, like that media inventory, how they could be placed, the display, or that kind of product, the sponsor product placement. And then if it works, then this is something that he needs to push internally. Like, so, okay, I see that works. I can see the increase in revenue, the increase in conversion, not only for the product itself, but for the whole category. So now I need to get the technology. So I need to go out in the market and explore the technology so that they can have that in scale, right?
So one of the things that this scenario lends itself to is being able to deliver personalized media or personalized plans and personalization. Does that take a lot of organizing, or are you still at the stage of using A/B testing to be able to prove the revenue return and you haven't gone down the personalization route yet?
We do also personalization. It all really depends on the client, on their tool stack, what they've got. Depending on the level of the personalization, I think it's important first is to understand exactly how much that will impact the result. Because sometimes what we are doing in terms of like splitting audiences, giving them different content, it has like a really high cost in terms of people, like human effort to build those things. But and you don't actually know how much you are getting out of it. So it's important to use sometimes A/B testing strategies first to explain and to highlight, like what that needs to be done. So then they can scale the strategy. So it all depends there of the maturity level of the client. But we use a lot of the A/B testing tools, but we also use their display platforms. We for doing the personalizations, we have to use their personalization tools as well for the sponsor products, or for just using the recommendations that they got to add like a sponsor position inside it if that's not also integrated. So we have to be creative in terms of that. Sometimes understand their toolkit, what they've got, and what we can do to present that idea and to understand how much they can get out of it. So then giving them the insights to improve their whole tool stack.
One of the things you've mentioned in the course of this conversation is that you've been dealing with brands such as L'Oreal and Apple and things like that. Now, I would suggest that those kind of brands have a great deal of loyalty. If I use my wife as an example, she buys Chanel perfume and she'll continue to buy Chanel perfume, and she might try others now and again, but she tends more to go back to Chanel, whatever number it might be or whatever sub-brand it might be. But she's got great loyalty. The same with Apple. So I'm thinking on the levels of personalization, an existing customer of that particular brand is going to need a different requirements with regard to keeping that brand than, say, somebody who's never bought that product before or that brand before. Is that where you think that the complications and the heavy lifting of the manpower that's required is needed inside the retailer?
Yes, but not only that. I think that when we look into the brand, they work with most of the bigger brands. They work with completely different categories there, and inside each category, they have a specific position. So they can be the market leaders for one category, but be the followers to another one. Inside that, you have all the audiences as well. As you said, you have the loyals from one brand, and then people that usually they switch brands all the time, and what sort of strategies that you need to do for each one of them. So when we go into those specifics, I think one thing that's very important to consider is the size of the sampling that we have for each one of those audiences. So we get the numbers, we get the numbers on the media plans, but then we have this time, this space that we need to look into those audiences, the size of them inside that specific point of purchase, and then prioritize which one of the strategies that we are going to use for each category, audience, and so on. So I think there is a level, an effort in terms of filtering those audiences inside each one of the categories. And then also, when you go into those specifics, you think that maybe for someone that switch brands all the time, using a sponsor product on the top of the search page is a very good strategy, because they are looking into brands, they're looking into that category, and you'll be top of mind. At least you'll be the first one that they will see when they enter the page. Mm-hmm. So it might work really well for that scenario. But would that work the same if there is a loyal customer? If they already buy a specific brand, if you put your brand on top of it, I don't think that will be the best strategy to make them buy your product, because they need more. They need more just about placement. They need to understand the benefits of your product.
Yep.
They need to understand the differentiations that it have with the brand that they are using now. And most of the time, if you look into the retailers, they don't have a lot of ad spaces that give the opportunity to the brands to present that. So this is something that we can work on, like in terms of going into those specifics and building these different experiences for each one of the customers. And then I think when you start talking about that level of personalization, it's important to understand that the management of all these type of experiences, displays, and what's going on still requires a kind of like of expertise, of understanding from the retailer and organization of the retailer to do that in order to have a good experience, especially when all the tools, the client doesn't have the whole tool stack implemented inside their channels. So I think this is something as well that takes some time in terms of our efforts to build and to organize and help to things scale up.
So I think this concept is absolutely fantastic for retailers, but I think there are other markets as well that perhaps this same model could work. And I take, for example, things like travel companies or companies that sell other people's travel packages, aggregators that sell, for instance, insurance from different brands. Have you moved out of the retail at all into other sectors, or is it just primarily focused on retail because you think the market's big enough already?
Absolutely. It definitely works. We didn't have the experience yet on this specific segment on the service, but I'm sure that it can be adapted for us to work as well. I think we started into the retailers, especially because we were very close to them. It's important even to explain that in our timeline, at one point we were acquired by a big retailer, the biggest retailer in Brazil, Magalu, and then and we had the chance to work internally with the retail media and ad teams there, trade marketing teams, and to improve our idea of this service. We started this before the acquisition, but under Magalu we had the opportunity to learn their pain points. It's like what was the hard things for the retailers to do and why that happened, And then when we left Magalu, now we are a completely independent company again. We are offering this to the market, but because of all that experience, we got in this specific service specialized in retailers. But I don't think that this is something that needs to be applied only for retailers. I completely agree with you. We could explore other industries as well into the same company, in the same idea, but adapting it to their reality.
Well, it seems like a very interesting way of being able to work, and it's the first time I've heard of it with regard to what's being done the way that you do it, and I've not heard of it here in the UK, for instance. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but I've not heard of it as being as comprehensive what you've got to offer. Do you believe that this is a market which is at its infancy, not just in Brazil, but in other parts of the world? Or do you feel that this type of working with two parties, both the retailer and the brand, is in any way mature?
Since we started doing the service, I've been talking to a lot of people, asking questions, trying to learn what they are doing internally. What I see is like big techs that were retailers, the big techs like Amazon, Mercado Livre here in South America. They are more advanced in terms of they're exploring more, I think, the alternatives in terms of each one of the categories and what strategy that you could use specifically to each category inside their channel, the digital channels. But I feel that even when I talk to them about what we are doing, they found it very interesting, especially the sales teams there that say, okay, I deal with the sellers all the time, with the brands, and this type of service could help me a lot to speed up the intelligence, like the data that we have, and like give them more insights, and with that improve the amount of funding that they will bring into the company. So I see openings. It's just a question of adapting it to the reality of a company that was born with experimentation, that have all these areas sometimes that are consolidated internally, and then how to orchestrate them to work together for this project. So I think it's more a question of structure and how to adapt it to their structure than not being possible to do it, But yeah, I can see there are different levels of maturity, but I still think that it's possible to improve what they are doing, each one of them.
It's been a fascinating conversation. I've had my eyes opened, as you would say, with regard to the possibilities of how this approach to business would work, and it all seems that it's, as I said earlier, it's a win-win scenario. So Eduardo, thank you very much for your time. I've learned something today that I didn't really know much about beforehand, so I look forward to be able to touch base with you in maybe 6 or 12 months to see how things are progressing and see whether you've had the opportunity to move into other markets outside of the retail. But for now, Eduardo, it's been great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John. It was a great opportunity. To be happy to have this chat with you again. And I think just to highlight what you're saying, I think this service is very important for the brands to improve their conversion inside the marketplaces, and also for the retailers to increase their revenue into that line there of retail media. Thank you very much for your time, and see you the next time.